there is a difference between security and peace. The lack of war is not peace, it's simply security. Peace is a different concept. Peace is when you feel comfortable, when you have nothing bothers you, or there is not something that challenges you very much. You can live in a secure country, but if you're being discriminated, if your rights are being violated, if you do not have access to education, to work, you don't have peace. And without peace, it is difficult to live.
Where lust for a whole life and nothing but less makes people jump out of a comfortable pond into an unknown ocean. Welcome to that journey between the East and the West. Who says rolling stones don't gather moss? Hello everyone, I am Meenu Gupta, your host for the day, and I'm delighted to have you join me every week as amazing people share their incredible and inspiring life stories of straddling continents. Thank you. Listen, listen, and listen. God has given us 2 ears and 1 mouth, which is a clear indicator that we need to listen more than we speak. This is what one of my guests said when I asked him for one of the most critical elements of peace building across continents, between the East and the West. Today, with this episode, I urge you to listen and also reflect on privileges as well. As we continue on this journey of hearing voices on war or peace from different parts of the globe, I urge you to open your hearts and your complete beings and listen. If you live in a safe place with walls and a roof, you are privileged. Millions across the world are looking for shelter. If you don't have bombs dropping constantly as you listen to me, you are privileged. For many, this has become jarring, not chosen music. If you have freedom to speak at home and in your society, you are privileged. Many get punished for voicing their opinions. If you get 3 meals a day and have food in your refrigerator, when you walk into your kitchen and open its door, you are privileged. Millions don't know where the next meal will come from. If you are allowed to go to school, or your children are, you have immense privilege. My guest for today hails originally from Afghanistan, where the Taliban have banned girls from going to school. At the beginning of the corona pandemic, when Italy was under siege by an unknown virus and dead bodies were piling up in morgues as the world watched in horror, I received a WhatsApp message from a friend in Italy. Meenu, this virus knows no borders. Very soon it will be everywhere in the world. And very soon that was true. In the same way, a thought and an act of atrocity committed somewhere else will reverberate and touch you sooner than you think. Because we as human beings are interconnected to each other and to all earthlings as part of immense nature. Knowing this, there should be less wars. There should be more peace and more compassion on earth. However, there is not. As the 21st century moves rapidly ahead with technological advancement, many young people wonder why wars are escalating. They are standing up in solidarity with people they do not know. As young people come more and more into their own, their presence, voices, and thoughts will shape the globe. And the time is now. With this, I would like to welcome Yahya Qanie, the former founder and president of the Kabul Model United Nations, acting president of the United Nations Association of Afghanistan, and a co-founder of National Youth Consensus for Peace. He has created many opportunities for young men and women to discuss and help find solutions to ongoing national and global issues threatening not only Afghanistan but also the rest of the world as a whole. Yahya was a member of a steering committee to develop a 5-year global strategy on inclusion of youth in the peace process as a part of the UN Youth Envoy Search for Common Ground and United Network of Youth Peace Builders initiative. He has many accolades under his belt at a very young age and is also studying in New York on a scholarship. Thank you, Yahya, for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Meenu, for having me. And it will be a pleasure talking to you, sharing my experience and how all these ideas came from, what inspired us, and would be happy talking to you.
I have, of course, a lot of questions. To begin with, to understand you and your perspective better, do share, when did you actually leave Afghanistan? And what were the circumstances? And where is the rest of your family right now?
Well, I was born as an immigrant during the peak of Afghan civil war in 1994. When my family refuged to Pakistan to literally save their lives, I was born there. My family stayed for a couple of months in Pakistan, and there I was born. Well, the second time when I left Afghanistan, it was in August 2021. It was the last day of civilian evacuation on August 30, 2021, when I left the country to, again, literally save my life. But I was alone this time. My family was left in Afghanistan. They were there for a few months under the regime of the Taliban. And now they are safe. They are not in Afghanistan anymore. They had the opportunity to leave the country.
Wonderful. So they are safe.
They are safe, indeed. They are privileged. They had the opportunity to save their life, leave the country despite years of the service that my father and my mother, as well as my family, did to country. But it was not a time for them to stay, and there was no more opportunities to stay in the country.
It has been reported that Afghanistan is now facing one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. The Afghan economy has no cash to pay salaries, to buy oil, buy food. Western aid has been suspended because the Taliban government includes designated terrorists, apparently, and millions of Afghans face acute malnutrition and starvation in the coming months. The Taliban also lacks the capacity to manage these challenges, but there is no clear alternative to their rule, or so it has been reported. So what was life like in Afghanistan 10 years ago and now?
Well, actually, let me go a bit back in history, how different stages of life was for me. When I was, before the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan, if to go 20 years back, I was living in Orazgan province. My father had a small medical clinic. He was a surgeon, and there I learned Pashto language as well. We were in Pakistan, and I was around 6 years old that the U.S. invaded Afghanistan, and I still remember the bombings, the U.S., when they were bombing Orazgan province to get rid of the Taliban following the 9/11 attacks. From back then, I had one question, that why there is war at first place. That sounds and the shocks of bombs were petrifying, honestly. And I asked too many questions from my father. Why Americans are here? Why are they bombing us? My father told me they're here to bring us peace. They're here to bring us freedom. But we didn't have an answer. I didn't have an answer for one question, that why there is war at first place. And after the US came to Afghanistan, we had a lot of opportunities since 2001 with the new government, with the educational system, with media, with human rights values, with civil society organizations, with international community being close and supporting the Afghan people. And that's how we started. We began everything. Sometimes when people ask me about the US involvement, I think we should be thankful for their presence in supporting, if not military invasion, for providing us the opportunity of, let's think, if the US never invaded Afghanistan, or they invaded Afghanistan but they wouldn't have a state or provided these opportunities, how about the human rights, women rights, these educational opportunities? Did people like me and my generation had these opportunities? Of course not. But coming to your question, 10 years ago, around 2014, life was very different. We had too many opportunities. People were very much hopeful. Young people were engaged in the society, in the community, and they had that passion to contribute and use the opportunities. You could just feel it, you could see it simply walking on the streets, talking to people. But now it's completely a different country. When I speak to friends in Afghanistan, it's not only about the economy or about human rights, one of other things. We don't have any more opportunities there. People are completely unhopeful about their future, what is going to happen. And this humanitarian crisis, what's going on in the country, for Taliban's incapability to lead the country with the humanitarian crisis through climate change, drought, through poverty, all of them has added to the suffering of people. And those people who could contribute, who did contribute to some extent, they're also no longer present in Afghanistan, and we don't have those opportunities that we had 10 years ago. There was a system before, we had a government, but it's no longer there. Nothing is available. Even if some young people who are in Afghanistan, I talk to them, when they want to make efforts, they simply cannot do it as they could do it in the past.
So that was Afghanistan over the years.
Yes, Afghanistan over the years had a lot of changes, as far as I remember, before the US invasion, when I was in Pakistan and then we came towards Afghan province, life was quite different. The perspective we had, though I came from an educated family, my father a surgeon and my mother an OBGYN, but the perspective was very small. Even what I knew about the world was through posters, through some images. I couldn't imagine what the life and would have been out of Afghanistan. The perspective was so narrow. We didn't have television. We just had radio. That's how we got to know about the news. It was completely different back then. But after 2001, especially after 2003 and 2004, when we came back to Afghanistan, life was completely different. There were many opportunities. Afghanistan was exposed to new ideas. The people of Afghanistan, we had a lot of young people who wanted to contribute to them. And we interacted, we learned from the international community, not only from those who were present in Afghanistan, but we had the opportunity to connect to people who are out of Afghanistan and learn how we can make the country a better place. So these were some period of efforts that the young people made in civil space, in political space, and in business, in different areas, and they built the foundations. They were hopeful that the country will someday be in a place that we all imagine and we all work for. But after 2021, it's a completely different country. We do have those buildings, those same roads, but that hopefulness, that a sense of being connected, that a sense of being happy or having peace, it's no longer present, because I would say we had a level of peace in the past. We don't have peace anymore, and there is a difference between security and peace. The lack of war is not peace, it's simply security. Peace is a different concept. Peace is when you feel comfortable, when you have nothing bothers you, or there is not something that challenges you very much. You can live in a secure country, but if you're being discriminated, if your rights are being violated, if you do not have access to education, to work, you don't have peace. And without peace, it is difficult to live.
That was very nicely said. Thank you for sharing that with us, Yahya. But from what I heard, there is a certain contradiction also. Countries are always mass of contradictions. So you mentioned that when you were young, around 6 years old, you had a lot of questions. Why is US dropping bombs on us? And however, on the other hand, there's also this other picture that you have mentioned where everybody was getting an opportunity to develop or to work on in their lives and go on and hope and get educated and see opportunities and be part of the opportunities. Am I right? Contradictions?
I will not say I was questioning why the US was bombing Afghanistan. I got to know about that from some very simple answers my father told me, but most importantly through the years of my work and when I was studying my master's degree education, and throughout the years I got to know like there is societal peace, there is political issues. It's about war, simply war and conflict, how we solve the conflict. Even before the US invasion, we had this war in Afghanistan. My question was why we are fighting, why we are not solving our conflicts through other means. Because in Afghanistan, one of the things, it's a cultural norm that we need to obey the elders. And our elders have taught us throughout the story that the only means to solve conflict is through violence. And that is what we see even today. That people, the first tool they use to solve their conflict is violence, by picking the gun, by hitting others, by harming others. This is not the right way to solve conflict through dialogue, through different other means, to have broader perspective. That is something we need more in Afghanistan, and that is what I have been working through the organizations you mentioned, particularly a couple model United Nations and then National Youth Consensus for Peace, to enable people to speak freely, to share their opinions, to accept other people's opinions. And there is a best way to solve conflicts. It is through dialogue, through understanding. And if we have a broader perspective, we can come to an agreement with others. We can accept the diversity, whether it's about genders, whether it's about religion, about ethnicity. But if we do not see that bigger picture and perspective, and we do not have that acceptance, we definitely use violence as means to solve our conflicts. And this was something I have been curious about. Why are we doing this? And when the US invaded Afghanistan, the bombing of the US, that was also part of this process. Bombs, killing people, it doesn't solve problem. It just creates more problems.
Thank you for sharing in such a nice way. And I totally agree with you. And I have this line as well. Why do we have war? When we are human beings, we have other tools. We are supposed to have an intellect and a mind, which should take us to another level. So I agree with your questioning. Now, then there's another thought. When did you realize that, say, you were born and brought up at the time when there were wars and you had a lot of questions when you were growing up with the bombs and violence around you. Now, when did you realize there's another way to resolve conflict? Not doing it in a violent way, but there is a non-violent way as well via dialogue. When did you realize that?
Well, one of the great things that I learned in my family from my parents, it was dialogue. It was solving problems through dialogue, and that's something that came to me from family. But how I learned to do it in the community, that's because I followed my dream. I followed my passion. When I was finishing high school, around 2011, a later year when I got into Kabul University through national entrance exam to study French literature, though I really wanted, my passion was to study international affairs and political science, not only to find an answer to my question that why there is war at first place, but also with the international affairs to have more cooperation with the world. These were my visions and my passion and my question, and something that made me very curious. So in 2012, when President Obama took the office, his second term, it had a really big impact on me. I didn't know a lot about the politics, especially about the US politics, but seeing a Black American being elected as the US president, that's not something I have read about the history of the US. That's not something I was expecting or I was imagining. It really made an impact for me, like, okay, see how far the US has come. We can definitely move forward, and why not us? Why not us can live in a diverse and inclusive society and community. So throughout the work, when I was a student, I got involved in different activities aside from work I was doing with the French Institute. I was also taking on some small projects with my classmates. I was volunteering with a civil society organization. I was very much active, and I was curious at that stage to learn what's happening around the world, to get the knowledge and also in some ways contribute to the community. It was around 2015 when I was still an undergrad, but I did have that passion to connect Afghanistan, our people, to the world. I didn't have the knowledge, but all I knew was French language. So I started translating French articles to Dari language, our own language, for Le Monde Diplomatique Persian. I simply choose to do that because I didn't have any other tools. I just knew French language. But I thought maybe translating these articles can help my pupil to learn about what's going on in the world, how we can learn from these experiences. Because one of the things I really like to do was learning different languages. I can speak in 5 languages. The thing is, when you get to know a new language, you get access to another world of knowledge in that language, especially English is very important. So I did have those tools, and I wanted to bring it to my people, because in Afghanistan, a lot of people, they do not have the opportunity to simply go to school, to have primary school or secondary school, leave alone learning another language in a way that they can use from opportunities available, or learning, getting access to the knowledge that's in foreign languages. So these were the ways that I was trying to bring in the international experience, the international knowledge to my country, and introduce different opinions and points of view to my pupil to learn how we can solve conflict through other means as well.
You've been in New York, I believe, right? Since last 3 years?
Yes, I have been in New York for the past 2.5 years. I came to New York in January 2022 when I started my master's degree at NYU.
Do you still dream of going back to Afghanistan at some point?
Well, that's a very difficult question, Meenu. I came from a very difficult background, and the things I have been doing in Afghanistan and thinking about going back, I haven't honestly thought about it that way, because when I came to the United States, I had too many amazing opportunities here as well. Before coming to New York, I actually, from August 2021 until December 2021, I was in a limbo, moving to different countries and different states. And even at that point, I was thinking not only about my family, but about Afghanistan as well, like how to serve my country in some ways. But the bigger question was, well, everything is gone now and I'm away from the country. What is next for me? What should I do next? And I had so many amazing people who helped me during that difficult period. And I got a scholarship from New York University, which I'm very much thankful for. because having a master's degree or education in international affairs or global affairs was a childhood dream. And it was a great thing for me. And also I got to know when I came to New York, I came to International House, which is it has a rich history. It was built in 1924, 100 years ago. And this is a community of 700 graduate and PhD students from 76 countries, I believe. It's a very diverse community. I haven't thought about going back to Afghanistan, but I have thought about how to adapt in this country. That's also very important for me, because to serve myself, that's first. If I can serve myself, I definitely can serve my country. So it has been just a few years that I'm away from Afghanistan, but working for my people, I'm still trying to do that. I'm still trying to use different platforms and opportunities to do that. For example, it was in 2022 that I launched, it was in personal capacity, I launched a mentorship program for Afghan girls who are in Afghanistan and other countries. And I brought students from New York University, from Columbia University, so each of us can mentor at least 2-3 young Afghans, women, girls, and help them with whatever they need support with in terms of education and profession. These are the things I have been doing, small things, but to make a tangible impact. Going back to the country under the Taliban, I can go back there, unfortunately. But when we have a secure Afghanistan, but I will definitely do my best to make sure that my generation is educated, they have access to opportunities, and we bring and we have those democratic values in the country. Again, I will definitely work for that. When we have a more secure and an inclusive government, I might go back to the country, because it's a very difficult question. When I was in Afghanistan, I did my whole things and I built the foundations, not only me, my generation, to serve the country. But when we left Afghanistan, everything collapsed and we had to start everything from scratches. So everyone, including me, are thinking about building a foundation here, but also to serve our country and community, which I have plans and I'm thinking about. Going back to Afghanistan and starting everything from scratches, it's a bit scary at this moment, and it needs more time to think about it. But for serving my country and community, definitely, there is no doubt I will always continue to do that. But not only Afghanistan, here in the United States, it's an amazing country. We have a lot to learn from their community, their way of living, and connect the community, the people together.
You mentioned about a mentorship program you had started in 22. I heard an activist say the following words, an activist in Afghanistan, a female activist: "The whole world has turned its back on us." That's what she'd said. What do you think?
Well, I will say in a political level, that's true, that's correct. The whole world has turned their back towards even the people of Afghanistan and what's going on. But when I talk to people here in the community, with the students, with my professors, with my network here, people do have empathy. They are looking for ways to support the Afghan people. There is definitely challenges. For example, they want to do things, they want to help in a personal capacity or organizational capacity, but it also has connections with what's going on in politics, with the sanctions, with how the Taliban treat the people, with their governance, with their connection to terrorist groups, with how they treat women, particularly with human rights abuses. These are the things that are not acceptable for my people, for the international community. It's not based on humanities. Well, about the people, I think there are amazing Afghans who I know are still working. They are providing online educational platforms. We have been offering mentorship. There are other organizations I know and I'm aware of who are providing mentorship opportunities. There are countries like Japan who are providing or Italy, who are providing scholarship to Afghans who are even in Afghanistan, and people who are Afghans who are out of the country, they do have access to some level of opportunities. But if we compare it to before 2021, that's true. We don't have that level of opportunities, or we don't have simply the international community present. We are not connected to the world very much anymore, which is unfortunate. But it doesn't mean this will last long. This is the new normal. It's definitely not. I do believe that these people like me and my generation, we had the opportunities, we used it, and it's up to us to make sure that the situation in the country doesn't goes on this way. And no matter where we are, we definitely have things to contribute. These amazing women, they definitely have beautiful stories. They can start small initiatives and some initiatives to help hear the voice of Afghan girls who are in Afghanistan, share it to the world. That's something we need. For example, I'm not in the country. I can't do a lot. When I was a student, I was trying to use different or create opportunities, small opportunities, to make sure my pupil and we are connected to the world in a social and educational level. I will encourage them to have small things, just make their voice heard. If there is not very much opportunities, they can be people who can start, and there are definitely people like me and amazing people in other countries who will take their hands and will support them in any ways. So that's my message to them. But that's completely not acceptable, and that's unfortunate. And it hurts learning and knowing about what my pupils, especially Afghan women, are going through.
Yeah, at present, from what I understand from the various stages of Afghanistan, last several years, it is clear that the voices of youth do not matter at present in Afghanistan. And in your opinion, you are in the US, do you think that the voice of youth matters there?
I think no. For the governments, for the elders, it doesn't matter. And that's what we have been fighting for. Because Afghanistan is the youngest country outside the continent of Africa. I say it again, the youngest country in the world outside the continent of Africa. We have 70 to 75% of the population under the age of 30. These numbers might have slightly changed, but until 2021, 75% of the Afghan population was under the age of 30. So these people must be heard, must be provided opportunities, and there are reasons for that. One of the reasons is, like, if we see the countries with war, with violence and conflict, in the meantime, they have a large young population. But also, these young, if we provide them with the right tools and right opportunities, and we listen to them and we hear them, we can have them as a source to contribute to the economy of the country, to the development of the country. They can be ambassadors to connect our nation to the world. That's how they can do it. And for young people, when we were together, a group of young leaders at the National Youth Consensus for Peace, our main objective was to have youth inclusive peace process. And this was particularly important in Afghanistan. Why? Because in the 20 years or even before that, in the last 50 years, these are young pupils who are fighting on the front lines, whether as a part of the government or the other conflicting parties. So they needed to be heard, because if they are fighting on the front lines, why they can't talk about peace? Why there is not opportunity for them to talk about peace? This is something we were bothered about and we wanted to work for. And it's very important to hear their voices. What are their opinions? The traditional way of closed-door meetings and negotiations among the leaders and talking about the future and destiny of people, it doesn't work anymore. It's inclusion of young people. We need to hear what they want, what are their expectations, how we can integrate them back to the community. For example, in 2021, we were advocating very much for a peace building process because it was a peacemaking process. With peacemaking, you can just make an agreement, bring conflicting parties to an agreement, and that's over. With peace building, it's a long-term process. It takes years to make peace. For example, think about the Taliban back then. If we had a better peace process, an inclusive peace process, and peace building process, we could think about these Taliban. If they come back, we make an agreement. What will they do in the future? How we can integrate them in the community? They have different values. How we can teach them these values? They don't have skills. They have been fighting in mountains for the past 2 decades. How we can give them the skills and tools to bring bread to the table, to protect their family values. There were a lot of questions to be solved and discussed and addressed, which didn't happen. So it was a peacemaking process. There was an agreement with conflicting parties, and we see the result what's going on. And we see with the people that didn't go through a process, how they treat women, youth, and the Afghan people as a whole.
Thank you for sharing that. You've voiced it very well. In view of the immense protests in the US and many other countries regarding the situation in Gaza at present, what do you think that the young people have to say that the world does not want to hear? Because if that had been so, there would not be a reason to protest.
Well, from what I see, what I hear, and as a young people, what I believe is we need peace. It's enough of war. We had too many wars and none of them solved anything. It's time to learn from our past experiences and accept that we are different people. We have diversity. We have diversity in our religion, in our opinion, in our values, in our gender, in our ethnicity. And that's not a bad thing. That's something we can use it in good ways. We can use it as an opportunity for improvement. And I think people deserve, it's human rights. It's the right to live. It's definitely, if we are thinking about violence as a means to solve conflicts, definitely that's the first step we take to violate human rights. And that's not the right thing.
You mentioned that they are with this amazing group of people from over 76 countries, really global group, so to say. Do you and these people sometimes struggle with a sense of belonging? Because it is not easy. You are in a different place. Family is somewhere else. Generally, belonging begins with home. So now there are two things, belonging and home. Do you and the other people sometimes struggle with that, and how do you cope with it?
Well, when I came to International House, you're referring to International House, I called International House, my room, my home, and this community, my family. And that's how we think, all of us think. If we are away from our home, this community can be our home because we are interacting with each other on a daily basis. We are learning from each other. Of course, there's a lot of diversity in this community. But the great thing is, no matter what's going outside, what's going on in the bigger picture, you always see these people coming together, talking, honestly sharing their opinions, having an open discussion when it's about such issues. We do have platforms. But aside from that, it's just living like a family, like a brother and sister. Everyone is very honest and they have empathy towards each other. When, for example, I came to International House, everyone was very much, and they are still, empathetic towards me, and they were treating me very, very well. Not only me, other Afghans and people who have been through difficult times, for example, when the Ukraine invasion happened or when the Gaza war happened. They don't think about the conflicts. They think about, we as a community think about how we can support each other, how we can be a support to people who need it the most. Because at a community level, we do have responsibilities to keep ourselves in peace and live in a peaceful society and contribute effectively for a peaceful society. But there are also political things, so not just colliding this political and what's our responsibilities in society with each other. That's something that I see a lot here in these communities, and that's something I appreciate. We don't have conflicts about these issues. These are political things that people normally doesn't talk very much, but if they talk, it's an open discussion, and they're open to hear different perspectives, and they're open to be challenged with what their opinion is, and they do accept new perspectives, new ideas, and that's something beautiful that I have noticed here.
It's wonderful. You are truly then in a place which will allow you to flower and flourish. Now, is there one message that you would like the youth, not only in the US, but in other parts of the world, to hear?
My message would be to see everyone as humans, not to see what divides us, what differences we have. If we see what brings us together, that makes our work easier. It's simply that easy. Others are humans. They also have emotions. They also have dreams. They also have a family and world. And just seeing at positive things and working on that, how things bring us closer to each other. That's my message, because what I have noticed here in these communities as well, people are very much honest, they are hopeful and also happy, and they are thinking about what can connect them at a societal level. If people are from the same country, if they can play the same instrument or they're interested in the same sports, they're focusing on those issues, not about what divides us, what differences we have. And that's something that I mostly notice in the young generation, among young people, and that's very beautiful. And I think we need this more in Afghanistan as well, to see what brings us together. We are all humans, we're all Afghans, we're all Muslims. Why we are looking at small differences we have. These differences makes us more diverse and makes us more beautiful. Even the religion, it just gives positive things, it gives positive messages, for example.
And what about your message to the other generation that one sees around? The generation at times where there might be a conflict between one generation, how one generation thinks, and how another generation thinks. What would be your message to them?
Well, when it comes to conflicts, we need intergenerational dialogue and understanding. That's the best and the only means, not the only means, the best way to understand each other, not only solve conflicts, but to understand each other's and respect that we do have different experiences and we are coming from different points of view. We have been through different challenges in life, but the older generation, they have something more beautiful. They have experience and they know best how to solve these issues, and they can guide us how to go through challenges or how to use opportunities in life. But in the meantime, the younger generation, they have their own perspective. They have more beautiful, positive, and creative ideas. So just intergenerational dialogue to use their experiences and use the creative and new ways of thinking of the new generation and bring them together for creating opportunities, for solving the problems, especially the conflicts. That's something we can do because the world has become very much divided. We definitely can't afford and focus on generational divides and differences at these stages.
Thank you. Actually, that is very beautifully said, and that message, I think, holds true for generations across. Dialogue. Actually, dialogue to resolve differences, and resolving only comes by first understanding them. or with the attitude to try and understand, to be open and try and understand the other picture, because it's all about every coin has two sides and it would still be a coin. So thank you for putting it in such a nice way, and thank you for sharing yourself and your life story. I do wish you all the best on your journey, and I'm so glad that when you left Afghanistan, you still left with hope. And I'm very happy for you there.
Thank you very much, Meenu. Of course, that's something I will always keep it, my hopes and my dreams. And that's what I brought with myself when I left Afghanistan. I came with a backpack. I left my family, my friends, my colleagues, the establishments I had. But I did brought my hope and dreams with me to serve my people and serve humans of this world.
Wonderful. Thank you, dear.
Thank you for listening to the series Between the East and the West. Do subscribe to the channels mentioned on the site in case, of course, you liked what you heard. I am Meenu Gupta, the host of the series, and I'll be looking forward to your comments. We love feedback. Thank you once again. Namaste and bye-bye.